All right, thank you. Appreciate it, Justin.
Yes, sir.
All right, Mr. Commander, would you be so kind as to open us up in prayer, sir?
Sure. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day and for its many blessings. Thank you, dear God, for your Son Jesus. In him we have all hope. Dear Lord, we ask that you help us here tonight. Thank you, dear Lord, for this meeting here and for each one present. Pray, dear Lord, your blessings upon each one. Pray, dear Lord, that you help us, that we make the right decisions for this county. And thank you, dear Lord, for the county that we live in and for all the blessings you give us. And we'll be mindful to forever give you the praise. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, sir. Before we approve the agenda, we're going to pull B8. It's going to be pulled from the agenda this evening, just so everybody can kind of mark that on there.
B8?
B, is that right?
Yeah. B8.
Okay. All right. Feeling like this battleship or bingo. All right. I entertain a motion to approve. Thank you. Got a motion by down there. Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Any opposed? All right. Recognition public will do like we usually do, and the way I work it for budget is when the agenda item comes up, we'll get some discussion first. I think it makes more sense that way. If you want to make comments, you've heard everything, and you can make comments based on the most recent information. And also, we kind of do it a little more informally than some committees. So if you, during that agenda item, if you have a question or something, a lot of times, just kind of try and get our attention. We'll try and do it that way, and we just try and be as ordered as we can. But we appreciate everybody's willing to do it a little bit different. I think it's worked out well, and we've gotten a lot of compliments on it, so we'll kind of go from there. Approval of minutes, entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All right, thank you. Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? All right, sounds good. I'll go with my report real quick. Just as an update, it's more related to EMS. Dennis has been working on the camera system, what we've talked about for, and the reason it's going to come through here is he's just doing a test part, using about $6,000, setting up some cameras, and we'll kind of have a live action, see how it works, and then he's going to have a report a little bit later on if he feels he still is comfortable with that system, the software, and everything else, because that's something obviously that'll come through our committee. But just want to let you know that's on the horizon. And EMS, Chief Miller's asked about it a couple times for their security. I really don't have much else on that one, Mr. Mayor.
No report unless we have a
Yes, Travis. David, it's all you, buddy.
Item 5, I'm sorry, on page number 5, for the first item, item A. That is the budgetary timeline that the budget committee needs to approve each year. It's to be worked up between the director of finance and the budget committee. And this is my recommendation for this year's budgetary timeline that will align with the county commission and budget meetings and meet statutory requirements.
Any discussion? Entertain a motion.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, roll on, buddy.
Item B is long-term planning. All departments were requested to have their long-term planning information in November 30th, 2018, which is a little over a year ago at this point. My recommendation
Side
is,
note real quick for everybody, the long-term planning, what we talked about was 5 years operational, 20 years capital. And we'd asked each department to do that, kind of get it back to us. It lined up with what we've been doing as far as the courthouse and all the other different things to make sure our bonds were right. So, sorry, David, go ahead.
right now, my recommendation would be to request that all departments, if you look at the budgetary timeline, they're to have all the requests back by March 1st for their budget. Since they all should have, and several have and several haven't, got the long-term planning to request that they all have their long-term planning information updated and back to the county by March 1st.
We don't need a resolution for that. It's just something we're
No,
gonna
it's
put
going
out
to
for
be,
information. Right.
actually, I will include in my memo with the budgetary request to have the long-term information. The next item, item C, is from the, actually from the subcommittee, the nonprofit subcommittee. There's 3 items. The first is the resolution, and the other 2 are the recommended actual applications that correspond with it. We need to post the applications tomorrow, if at all possible, because of the timelines for the nonprofits to get back. Number 1's asking for item A for the approval of this committee to forward on to county commission to request their approval. Items 2 and 3 does not require any kind of commission approval, but I would ask that the committee approve those 2 items if they agree.
So we have discussion, we'll entertain a motion to accept that from the committee. And Mr. Whit, if you would like to, if y'all would like to just kind of go over it real quick.
Sure, would you guys like a quick summary of the budget committee? So the resolution that's been proposed, what it identifies at a high level is that we have the backing of state statute to identify and contribute towards both nonprofit charitable organizations as well as nonprofit civic organizations. And as you read through the resolution, you get to a therefore be it resolved, and it really breaks it down further that there's 3 real categories that we see as far as all those charitable contributions we've given in years past. The first of which, rural fire departments, a category really all into itself. A second category that you can lump together under the umbrella of economic and environmental, anything that is either tourism, economic development, or those agencies where we have a standing contract or some type of private act that dictates the arrangement. And then as well as any other organizations that really are bettering the civic environment. And then that third category we call serving our citizens. And these are true local nonprofit agencies. So you'll see a lot of the locally organized, operated agencies in that category, as well as our senior centers. So we wanted to just get our arms around those categories, and the proposal as far as how we will handle these going forward would be that all civic organizations, including the rural fire, so if you include rural fire as a type of civic organization, as well as all those others I've mentioned, we intend to keep those as part of the standard budget process as we always have in the past. But then those that are charitable organizations, the local agencies, along with the senior centers, we want to use a separate process to look at those in more detail. Because there's no private act, there's no other hierarchy or higher organization for that. We want to form a panel review that might include members of this committee or other members of the commission, or maybe even other members of the community. We haven't defined how that panel will be organized at this point, but we'd like to conduct that panel after the budget cycle. And so this might be kind of clunky the first year to do it, and it'll be a little bit different. And I'm going to work a lot with Alice, with the finance team, as they try to continue to field questions from these agencies and how it's going to work. But our goal would be to identify our funding level for those charitable organizations during the budget cycle, and then kind of using that high-level timeline that David gave us. So in or around June, when we hopefully approve our budget, at that point we would approve a dollar amount. Last year, if you look at just those agencies that are local charitable organizations or senior centers, our total charitable donation for that category was about $88,000. So if we look at this year, when we go to budget, we would say, is that the amount we want to fund, or do we want to fund more or less? And then after that process concludes, going into the late summer and fall is when we would do the panel to really look in more detail and add some additional accountability to those organizations, so that we really look at a lower level of detail at their budgets. And so, Jerry, to your, you had brought in a spreadsheet that had been used in the past as part of the whole nonprofit review process. So the 2 sets of applications that you see, there's one for civic and one for nonprofit charitable organizations. We condensed what was a 7-page application down to 3 pages. I'm really proud about that. I think that's going to be a lot easier for both the committees to digest, as well as easier for the agencies to work through. But we're also asking for a lot of additional documentation in terms of their IRS Form 990s, their budgets, including some specific line items. And the panel will be able to look at that information in a greater level of detail when we're looking at charitable contributions. So that, I think in summary, is there anything I missed? Members of the nonprofit committee. So that's our intent, and that's our proposal.
That's fantastic. We're going to really appreciate it. And for everybody else, kind of the room, to make it easier, there's groups that we have that we fund that fulfill government obligations, like our tourism, our economic development, different things like that. And they actually have separate funding mechanisms. And then there's groups that we just give money to outright, senior citizens groups, Ashley's Place, things like that. What we're hoping to do is determine, okay, this year we have X number of dollars for the charities, and then they'll have a panel that will actually decide how much each charity gets based on their applications, and it may change year to year, but we feel like that gives us a lot more accountability, and also kind of directs, we know where the money is going better. Shrek, do you want to say something on that one real quick? All right. Name and address, and then get going.
Kevin Baker, 424 Amy Wayne Road. First of all, I looked through some of the records of the subcommittee, and specifically, what part of the IRS code are you referencing here? Are you only referencing 501c3s, C4s?
All the 501s.
So both of them?
There's actually 6 or 7 different ways you can go.
Interesting, okay, thank you. Then also, I look at the resolution and I see you lay out A, B, and C under section A, rural fire, economic, environmental agreements, and serving our citizens. But yet on the application, you break it down differently. Was that intentional?
Statutory. The statute only spells out 2 nonprofits. One is charitable, one is civics, and fire departments will fall under civic. But if they want to, the committee have additional information, then there would be an attachment to go with the civic. It would make the 3rd group.
All right, that's good. All right, any more discussion, any questions for them related to it? Yes, sir?
Are we, on the actual forms themselves, are we done with the resolution and moving on to page 9 or 10?
As David said, the resolution we need to pass and pass the committee. We'd like to get your backing on all of it, but I think the proposal is to group and approve, but if we want to.
Okay. I just got a couple recommendations on page 9. In the middle of the page that says how many people are served by this organization. I would suggest that we put how many Sumner County citizens are served by this organization, because the organization could be widespread throughout Middle Tennessee, and I'm interested in knowing how many Sumner County citizens are going to serve with this money.
Mr. If you're okay, the suggestions will count as an amendment, so that way we don't have to change
And
anything.
then on page 10, up at the top, amount requested, whatever specific dollar amounts that they're requesting. And then I'd like to see another line right out to the side that says percent of total budget. So if we're giving someone, 0.5% of their total budget versus we're giving someone 85% of the budget, if we need to cut somewhere, I'm thinking we would go to the 0.5% allocation first versus the ones that really depend on it. So,
And that's just the amount requested, really divided by the total operating budget.
Yeah.
Really, that's the number you're looking for.
Yeah.
Okay, I agree.
Mr. Foster, do you mean to amend both applications? There's 2 applications, and the first 2 pages are the same. So you would actually be page 9 and 10, but if you go over to page 12 and 13, do you want to make those same changes on that same form? Okay.
First of all, everybody in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Amendment part passes unanimously. All right, all in favor of the resolutions as they're grouped and done, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and as we've said before, anytime we agree to something unanimously, it's understood that this would skip the 2 readings. So, yes, ma'am.
This is not in my computer system. Can you correct it and email it to me?
Yes.
Okay. All I have is the download.
Which one are we talking about?
You want the
application?
corrected applications.
Correct.
I have the application.
Okay.
David has.
Okay, you have it. Okay. I'm sorry. I thought this was.
We'll get them and change them.
Okay.
We'll change them and send you copies.
We just needed to attach the resolution. Okay.
Actually, we're just sending the resolution. I believe we're not sending the applications, correct? Because we're just sending I think we're just going to send the resolution, but only support the applications, because the applications, they need to
Yeah,
be changed.
they'll obviously.
They may need to be changed over time.
Yeah.
For instance, we probably need to put in additional for fire department, right?
Right.
So I think just the resolution would be on the application.
Resolution would be on the county budget, or on the commission.
Commission and not the applications.
Splitting hairs, but I get your point.
Right, you may want to change the applications and make.
So we don't have to do a resolution every time.
Every time you make an additional change.
Okay.
Passed unanimously. All right. Ms. Long?
We are on item E, which is on page 14. When we had our budget approval, it has to be approved by the state of Tennessee. Their one request, because we did not have 1/12 balanced for the, budgeted for the highway for cash. They're asking me to present those, or you, to present those to county commission each month to show her cash flows. Her cash flows are fine. Me and Ms. Harden reviews them regularly, but we do want to, satisfy the state's requirements. So I'm asking for this to be approved and sent on to the county commission just for their reviewing. Docket, for docketing. Just
Just
a
so everybody
docket.
understands, it's where Miss Judy has had to run so short, and when we did the penny to get her capital, it should hopefully fix her cash on hand, but it's gonna take a little bit.
And the state just wants to make sure we're doing what we're doing anyway.
All right, anything else, Dave?
I'm sorry, did I skip an item? I'm sorry, I did skip page 14, which is revenue monitoring. To tell you, we're right now looking at local revenues. If we were ready to budget those today, we would be about 0.6% above where we would budget during the year. So the economy is looking good. Everything's still going forward in the county, and we're right on track at this point. Item F is page 17, and that's the financial statement memo. That's just informing all commissioners, anybody else interested, that our financial statements will be published for the month of December, through the month of December, as of the county commission night. And that is all my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. New business. The education budget amendments information only. Move on to appropriations. First one is drug court. This is make a motion, accept it. It's a grant for one of the people in the drug recovery court, and the state has paid their salary through October of next year, but then they're redoing all their grants. This is one of the ones where Tracy came and talked to us about it and said they're getting ready to start cutting us pretty bad, and it's getting ready to show up, but this is the last one we're getting that we think. Thanks, sir. Any more discussion?
Is this for Tracy's salary or is it additional?
No, it's one of the
It's
assistants.
one of the
It's
assistants.
Kevin, I think.
Also, we didn't, Mr. Commissioner.
Oh, do we need to do the
Yeah, can we vote on the highway for docketing?
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. All in favor of highway docketing? Aye. Any opposed? No? Passed unanimously. Sorry, David. All right, and all in favor of accepting the grant for the drug court?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passed unanimously. Thank you. Sheriff's Office. Again, this is accepting where we get money from them. Any questions? Do we need a resolution on that one? All right, I make the motion.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passed unanimously. Thank you. Millersville Library, where they're receiving money from a technological grant, I make the motion. Thank you, sir. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Sounds good. Corner Barn. All right, this one is, and I'll make the motion to start the discussion. And the way the motion will read is that we allocate for general ops the money for them to hire a project manager consultant to begin getting bids on repairing the roof and formalizing the structure of the Corner Barn. Initially, it was our understanding, and that's that motion, but initially it was our understanding that the $250,000 state grant was just that, a grant. We have since learned that it's matching money. So the revenue source for this, I'm requesting to come from the hospital fund with the idea that it is replaced, it has to be replaced from either donations raised for the Corner Barn or for tourism. But either way, that money is put back into the Corner Barn at a certain date, which
Back
will
into the
come.
hospital.
Yeah, it's the hospital fund, thank you, yeah. And obviously, there's been a lot of different talk about what couldn't be used for the barn. We've kind of gotten ahead of ourselves at times, I think. What we're asking for is the money to be used to just put a roof on the barn so it doesn't fall in. And then through we've had several people, Bart and other people kind of approached me and said they feel like we could raise the money through private donations without having to do anything else. It might take a little longer. So I'm just kind of presenting to us that, and it goes back to general, that we use this startup money to get it going. We reimburse it with private donations, and as private donations come in and they match the grant, that we continue to finish out the barn with the idea that it needs to be roofed and it needs to be dried in. That I'm not sure how long that's going to take, just because we've got to raise the money for it. And then at that point, we can kind of decide, we've got it structurally, it's not going to fall down. We can decide what use it's going to be, if it is going to be any other use than just a historical monument. Discussion within our group. Y'all go ahead first. Any discussion from budget committee? Y'all want to wait? All right. Mr. Taylor, hold on 2 seconds. You're on, buddy. We got one. You're good. Go ahead.
I'm a little surprised. Yeah, it always is.
Better than a bud.
If we had a different date that limits the risk of the taxpayers.
Actually, you know what, Mo, make that as, I apologize. This is all contingent upon the fact that the Rogers Group would change the deed, because They won't do it until we can present them with a plan, but once we have the person from general ops present them with a plan, it would be contingent upon them changing it to take that part out about them getting it back.
And if we don't enter into ventures that's gonna directly compete against their existing businesses. Because I spoke with the senator at Lynn on the telephone before the last week. I also spoke with the state representative in Lynn, my state representative, in the 44th. And the senator actually made my mind start spinning. You know, he talked about he didn't really have a vision for it. Well, since that time, I got a vision. Well, it's a horse farm. We used to be an agricultural county. We still are, but we used to be more agricultural than we are now. So we have kids all the time from 4-H, FFA. They travel all over the Middle Tennessee competing. They were out this weekend at hog shows, the horse shows. We don't have a venue in Sumner County other than the Reese Brothers Mule Sales, where you can take your livestock to sale in Sumner County. That's the only one that I'm aware of. There used to be a cattle barn in Gallup. So we can, that my idea would be to use this for where its history come from. A farm, a barn. Go out there and work with if you want to put an office in there, we got a valuable piece of property on Hartsville Pike. It's called the Ag Extension Office. That used to be the Gallatin Library. If you wanted to move an office to that location, that would be the ideal office. I mean, it's a horse barn. It's a beautiful horse barn. I've had people tell me everything from tear it down and tell them, use the pile of rocks for a marker. Well, I'm not going to go that route. I don't like taxpayer money being sunk in to compete against their businesses. I want to vote for taxpayer money with the deed that we currently have. So there, we've got this on the agenda tonight, but what concerns me is we're going to hire somebody to look at it, but what path are we looking at? Because we've heard all kinds of paths, like you mentioned earlier. We've heard all kinds of things from the election office to the tourism office to to have a horse show or a goat show or a hog show or agricultural activities, we don't hold a lot. We need electricity, little water, place to park. This weekend, we had people from, I'm going to guess, 20 to 25 different states in our county for agricultural related activities, the Reese Brothers Mule Sale. The Reese Brothers are the largest mule producer in the world, not the U.S., the world. They're in a venture where we put money before in the Westmoreland Expo Center. Their contract ends this year, 2020. So they may be looking for a new place to hold their mule sales. But just some ideals and to let you know how to get my support.
Thanks, Bob. But I think that's Mo brings up a really valid point. We don't necessarily know what we do want to do with it, but we do know we need to put a roof on it.
And I think what you ought to say is preserve it through the roof, and I mean, there may be
Okay.
even window replacement
Mr. Bennett?
and some electrical inspections.
I do have one comment, and Mo's absolutely right. Matter of fact, my wife Denise hosted a group of FFA, from the whole state, sometime last year at the Crafton Barn, and they did a dinner for them and all that. But anyway, what I wanted to say is regardless of what it's used for, pretty much the outside shell of it and the roof has to be repaired the same way, is what I'm getting at. The only difference that it could possibly be, I noticed on Centric Architecture's, the design or what they had on there, that there would need to be nailable insulation on top of the roof. So if you want to preserve the look of the rafters and the showing, where the decking shows through, and the braces, which is what makes the barn look like it does inside, then you would need to put that insulation on top before the roof. And that would need to be on there pretty much regardless of what it's used for. And we do have almost everybody or that you talk to wants it preserved, at least for something. Thank you.
Jeremy, you got something?
Yes, sir.
All right, go ahead.
So I've been able to come to all the ad hoc meetings and come to things, and so I definitely appreciate the, I would call it architectural revival and the attempt to preserve things that are beautiful and old and kind of have a sense of antiquity. And so I'm very thankful for that and a firm believer. And so thank you for your efforts and you guys doing this. It is something that I agree with. It'd be great to preserve it. I think just the disagreement is how to preserve it and for what's the function is really what it comes down to. I think that's the biggest thing. And so, but I wanted to address a couple things first. I did speak to some of you should be aware. I spoke with Representative Lambert on the 44th back in December. He said he was going to share the findings with several people here. So I don't know who he shared this with. It's mainly addressing the grant that, you know, it is a matching funds grant, but according to FNA of the state, according to Lambert's office, there is not a one-for-one matching grant is what he told me. It's what FNA told him. It's just the fact that there is some type of contribution. So the question is, so there's a lot of questions.
So what you're saying is if we give like $1, we can get $2.50?
That's what Senator Lambert's office said, and that's what FNA was indicating, because that's what the actual written contract has, which I have a copy of that. Some of you should have received it, because he said he was going to send it to you. And also was told that even though by July, usually there needs to be some kind of report filed of the intent, according to Federal Health's office, I guess his assistant said that really we have a 2 or 3 year window. They understand with bigger projects that it's not something that has to be done now, even on using the money, that we could wait 2 or 3 years as we take time to figure out if we want to spend the money at all. So according to his office, so, you know, Senator Hale said that it indicated it was a 1-to-1 match, roughly. And so, but our other state representatives said different, so did FNA. So, and I have to go with what they wrote and what they passed in their budget amendment. And I have a copy of that as well, and I'll send that to you guys, or you can get it from our representative. And so, just a couple things just keep in mind. That, in my opinion, needs to be investigated first and clarified before we were to move forward any kind of budgetary amount. Because, like, we can spend 1 cent and get money that we need to stop the decay of this barn. That's a grant money. That might be a better option, in my opinion, and a better way of looking at it. So that does not come from the hospital fund. So I would request that you guys can press into the state rep on that and just get clarification.
Actually, Jeremy, we should be good. The way we've done this resolution was we're allocating the money from the grant to be used. And if we have to do any matching, then that matching comes out of the hospital. But if we have to do $1, then it's $1 gets paid back. But the whole idea was it's just allocating them the money so they can use it. Because we have to at some point say you're allowed to spend it. But along those same lines, if we don't have to give anything to it, we won't. So.
And that just wanted to make you aware. So,
No, we appreciate it. I like it.
So I thought you'd find that a little bit good news. It's a little bit more prudent for our Sumner County taxpayers. And, you know, again, my biggest thing is considering, I'm not exactly sure how this is pushing forward, of having the deed changed. So to clarify, are you guys saying you're wanting to approve funds before the deed's changed? Does that help me understand that?
Well, and if let me jump in, this is kind of chicken or egg thing. What we've always heard from Rogers Group is if you get a plan, bring us the plan and we'll be happy to seriously consider changing the deed, but they want a plan. So what my understanding of this, and I'm gonna see if I'm going the proper way, this resolution is not to fund any repairs. It's to fund finding a project manager who will determine what is necessary to preserve the barn from the roof and
Exterior.
an exterior, or, you know, and what's related to that. I mean, obviously, if the windows are broken out, they may need to fix the windows.
Yeah.
If the electrical is about to catch on fire, that may need to
There
be
is.
addressed.
And that plan should meet their requirements for, hey, how are you doing this?
Yes, just, you know, I'm not in support personally of appropriating that money to do that versus, I mean, I went out, you just pass around, had somebody go, just give an estimate, $59,000 for a roof.
30 seconds.
Okay, roof on the barn. So, anyway, so just want to take into consideration, you know, the citizens don't have a stomach for this, as is, and they definitely don't want to keep the proper business. And I spoke to Mr. Bagby when we talked about, you know, and concern what Mo said about maybe some kind of civics-minded group, something as a backdrop for this, if you're looking at, but not to compete against private business. So I would be in opposition to that.
Does anybody else want to be heard on this? Hold on, Kevin. Let Kevin, hold on just a second. I'm gonna let somebody go first since you've already spoken one.
Okay, go. I won't take much of your time.
You're fine. Go ahead, sir.
Mark Banks, B1628 Long Haul Pike. Thank y'all so much for being considerate and hearing what the people have to say. I think we're moving in ultimately the right direction. I think not just for our concerns, but for our county and the quality of it, and how we do things. I think we can be a model to everybody else, that's watching. The big piece I want to say is an FFA office at the Agricultural Extension Agency. If you think about moving that over there, that's an awesome idea, brother. That backdrop, the setting, the scenery there, how that could work. A small arena, horse show grounds, keep it private, 3 or 4H groups. Don't let those Saturday night guys come in there and ruin all the property. But it can stay green and beautiful. Be in that facility. We hosted at the ranch. We hosted the 4-H for almost 7 years. And we ran the kids in and out of there and hosted those programs and did that for free. Cumberland Electric helped us put lights up so we could run that show all the way into evening times. It was a grand time. The kids loved it. We were here close to home and it was safe. And that's what I say, that's a great property for that. And that's a great idea. Kudos, Mo. But I want to tell you, thank you for doing that. I think it's the right thing to do, saving the building. I understand what you're saying on the insulation on the roof to preserve that the way it's going to cost a little bit more than just putting a roof on it to do that, but that will preserve the wood underneath. And so, I mean, I guess you have to do all these type of things to do it. But anyway, I just want to tell you thank you. I see it going the right direction. And if I can be of any help, I'd love to do it. I'm an old farm guy and that's what I do, so.
Thank you.
When we start raising money for it, you'll be helping. Thanks.
What kind of tools have you got?
I am a tool guy too. So I'm loaded up pretty good.
All right, Kevin, you can go, or would you let Ms. Fennell go in front of you? All right, go ahead, buddy.
Well, I have to agree with Mr. Banksy. I think we are heading in the right direction. It's unfortunate that this thing started out the way that it did. But again, I just have to ask, how come we never had a business plan before we even started any of this stuff? You know, that we sit here and we tear each other up, all of us, including the citizens, all worked up. And even now, we're gonna propose spending, well, 50, 60, whatever $1,000 for a roof. Well, we don't know that roof may not be best suited as a solarium roof. I don't know, but the point is, if we had had a plan, all of this could have been remedied. All of the agita would have been put to bed months ago. And certainly, I appreciate the efforts, and I think we're having some good dialogue now. It's just unfortunate that it had to get to this, because there's a lot of people, myself included, that now just are gun shy. Gun shy. And
Ms. Fennell?
Hello, guys. I've spoken on the Sumner barn before. I do see some positive conversations going on, which is good. I don't know that anybody has answered, or that I know the answer to, why isn't the Rogers Group doing this? Why isn't the owners of the building doing this? Does anybody have an answer?
Right now, they're not the only ones.
Yeah, it's our building.
Well, they turned it over to us because they didn't want to do it. But I'm wondering why we wouldn't say, it's your building, you fix it. So,
The answer a long time ago that was told to me is that's not the business we're in.
okay, so is that the business we're in? So, you know, I mean, again, I'm trying to be respectful of taxpayer dollars. We all know that there's people without water, that there's kids that don't have school lunches, that, you know, we've got more schools on the horizon, and, you know, fine, we're talking $50,000. You look at that grant, though, the actual wording on the grant says that that money is for improvements. It's not for funding of investigating of the improvements. It's not for paying somebody to do a business plan. It's for improvements. That's the actual wording of that grant. So whatever we're talking about spending prior to an actual physical improvement should not be coming from that state money, which again is taxpayer dollars. So all of this is involving money that the taxpayers are paying for rather than the people who technically don't own, but really do own the building, okay? So I think you could probably get people supporting the 4-H, FFA, definitely get them supporting private donations and fundraising, any of those kinds of things, all of that. But I would just respectfully ask you to, number one, renegotiate this contract. It sucks to high heaven. And number two, just be respectful of where these dollars are coming from. There's people who, you know, got hit again, blindsided with a tax increase, and we're talking about just throwing more money out there for things that don't directly benefit them. And I know you're all intelligent people. I know that you're caring and compassionate people. So I'm just asking you to please think about the, you know, the single parents, the senior citizens on fixed incomes, all of those people who don't have the kind of spending money that this county does, okay? We know we've got more expenses on the horizon. Another tax increase is probably looming at some point shortly. I know, Chris, you're saying no, but I believe you. Or not. So we'll see. Future proofs past. So again, please just be respectful. Let's have some open dialogue on some ways that don't compete with current businesses, and find ways to involve, you know, kids, the schools, whatever, and go from there. So thank you guys for listening.
Can I have your name and address, please?
Probably deep in the record somewhere.
Not too deep.
More than once.
Not too deep.
Ruth Bennell, FENNELL. 1049. J Wade.
All right, we've had discussion, motions on the floor. All in favor, any discussion more?
Quick clarification on the resolution. What is the amount of the funding for this up to? We'll need an amount for resolution.
How about initially up to $250,000, which is what the grant is for? So that way, just, or do we need to start? I'm just, to me, that it's, they've got to bid it out anyway. We won't know what the
Yeah,
number
I mean,
is.
for the study, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Let me read what I'm kind of sitting here drafting and see if this is what y'all are talking ballpark. Be it resolved by the Sumner County Board of County Commissioners meeting in regular session on this block, that this body does hereby authorize the General Operations Committee to put out a bid for a project manager to create a plan to preserve the Comer Barn, including roof repairs and related items necessary for conservation and safeguarding of the facility. Be it further resolved that the grant funds be matched by a loan from the hospital fund, with these funds to be paid back from private donations and tourism funds. And be it further resolved that before the plan can take place, presentation of it must be made to the Rogers Group and corrections in the deed obtained to remove restrictions.
The word loan requires the approval of the director of finance from the state.
So what do you want me?
Paid from the hospital funds with a
Okay,
plan to
okay.
repay maybe. And they still may have to get their approval.
We can say we have a plan.
Okay.
So you're gonna have the general ops to find somebody, then we'll determine the amount and run it back through. Is that what we're planning to do?
Just like I was thinking. Yeah, absolutely. So, is everybody?
So
Go ahead, Dave.
So the question, there's no funds really gonna be expended until general ops finds somebody, and then it'll be, if we run this resolution, they're gonna have to run it back through at an amount.
Right. And that way it kind of keeps getting checked.
So should it just maybe be sent back to general ops, is my question. We're not actually appropriating anything. I'd say it's gonna have to go back through budget. We don't have amounts, because if we can't use grant funds for the project manager, it's gonna have to be appropriated. Right, it's gonna, this is gonna be kind of a circular pattern. You send it back, if you send it back to general ops, or find an amount, send it for it
So
either
do
way.
the resolution, but send it back to general ops then?
Until general ops finds the amount, and then let
Okay,
them,
and then, all right, is everybody comfortable with that then? So really, we're not voting on anything tonight other than sending it back to general ops.
You're voting for an appropriation.
What to do, yeah.
Up to
$250,000,
$250,000.
but
They will
depending on
let you know
how much it actually is.
They'll
how
bid
much
it
it
out.
actually
Right.
is. Correct.
but you won't have amounts to hire the actual project
Right.
manager until, no, general ops will have to find the
Yeah.
project manager, have to appropriate it later anyway.
Everybody comfortable with that?
I think it's important for everyone here and everybody that, might be eventually watching, just to understand that when, as Ms. Denning has put that in the resolution, the funds that we would intend to spend at this time, if there is any county funds, we would use from that hospital fund. And I think it's really important for everyone to understand that those are not new taxpayer dollars. That's no new income. That's money that's been sitting in reserve and was specifically earmarked for economic and community development.
Well said, ma'am.
And we can have a further discussion, but that's the way it's been explained to me over and over again. I do think it's really important that that's our consideration, and that's our intent, and that we want to use these funds in a way that respects the original intent.
Absolutely. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, passed unanimously. On to the next one, information technology. This is one where Dennis is looking at 2 projects they have, and it's 2 projects we've asked them to do. David, did you want to go over any particulars on that?
I think Mr. Carey was thinking about presenting it tonight, and when we discussed, I think he may be gonna wait till budget.
Okay, sounds
Next
good.
budget year, he's gonna bring you additional details, because he's not here tonight.
Okay, yeah, that's,
I think you discussed it with him earlier
we
today,
did, and that's,
and wait off more to budget season.
sounds good. Next one is water provisioning plan. I will actually, before we get started, I'll make a motion that we have discussion related to this so we can get it going. And I will actually defer to, real quick, because he was the one initially wanted on the agenda.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead, Mo.
Yeah, we have a water line grant going right now that a lot of you are aware of, voted on. It's to extend water lines on 3 roads, Harrison Lane, Rape Coats, and Hampshire Branch out in the Portland area. Well, when we were talking about spending money, hospital money on the culvert barn, I thought, well, we need to look at doing something with water lines, because there's been 9 roads improved with water since I've been on the commission for 9 years. Before me, the senior commissioner from the 10th district was the chairman of the public services committee that we had at that time, if I believe I'm correct. They got it started, the water provisioning plan of 2007. There is a list that resides in the county mayor's office of all the roads that don't have water. It's not updated because of the roads that we've put water lines on. So I actually had a phone call yesterday from a constituent that lives close to me that doesn't have access to water. I mean, and it's not, people think, well, people are going out here building these houses and they know they don't have water. That's not the case. Most of these are farms. Grandma and grandpa lived there. We got the farm, now we live there, and their wells go bad. I mean, if you won't see me coming asking you to run a water line to somebody's new house that decided to build there that doesn't have water, but you will on that note. And the planning commission and the coast department needs to get with the cities, because the city of Westmoreland and the city of Portland has pressure issues right now. So you may approve a rezoning from agriculture to R1A out here on so-and-so road. Doesn't mean they're gonna be able to get a water tap. Well, and these people building these houses now, they aren't doing it at the first like they used to. So they don't have to pay the minimum bill all through the process of building the house. So we've got multiple issues. That's why I call it the water provisioning plan, because it's provisions that, you know, we're getting strapped out in the Westmoreland and Portland service area, because I met with both of them and talked with both of them. Here's a map from Portland where they have no water. I don't have it from Westmoreland, but I can almost name every road in Westmoreland that doesn't have water in their area. So my initial request was 7 million from the hospital fund to address the lack of water. We passed a resolution in October that the governor had requested we pass. And it says, can you imagine a day without water? So I can't.
All right.
So also, sorry,
No, you're fine, go ahead.
something in my throat.
You're good.
But the pressure problems, I have some reports from the city of Portland too, that where once they get to 80% of their capacity on pressure, they have to start doing reports with the state. So here's a trend of what they've done over the last few years. And you can see when you get into the summer months, they're peaking at that 80%. So what I would request is, I know you're not going to approve $7 million tonight. I would request an ad hoc committee be possibly created. I would like to serve on it, to work with the cities and Westmoreland, Portland, Castaigne Springs, and White House Utilities, because, I mean, they have some areas that may still not have water as well. So, if that would be appropriate for me to make that request, that we can address this. I mean, we got a lot of things going on in our county, I know, but you wouldn't believe the calls I get. You raise my taxes and I ain't even got city water. I mean, you know what I'm saying? So if I ask for nothing, I get nothing.
So we'll get rolling real quick. I met with Ms. Ark in relation to a lot of this, and to kind of put in perspective, right now we've given $550,000 for the current CBDG grant. And what she said is they bid that grant out, or they bid out the work December 19th last month. It's got at least a year and a half before that work's done. We're not allowed to file for another grant until the work is done on that grant. So we've got a little bit of time before we can even apply for another loan or another grant on that. And the way the process works is, for the grants, you start applying in November and December, and then you'll send out surveys. You know, you'll see which areas, which roads you want to do. They'll send out surveys along those roadways, trying to figure out how many people meet different economic markers, and then also how many people would qualify for it. From there, you go on and you come back, and they'll kind of say, okay, we would approve this area, and each water district, thanks, Mom, has 2 or 3. They'll have like the first one, then they'll have an alternative in case the surveys don't fall through. So right now, Ms. Ark has talked with all the water districts. They're all, I don't want to say they're at max, but they've all done all the roads they're going to do that they have surveys for, that they have interest in right now. Doesn't mean they wouldn't do it. It just means that they don't have any of the preliminary work done. So if we gave them any money, they couldn't do anything with it right now. And we also can't give any money because there's not a grant that we can apply for another year and a half or so, unless they get the work done a little bit sooner. Along with what Mo's saying, and Mo, I would say, honestly, in talking with Ms. Ark, we don't even have to have an ad hoc. If you wanted to start meeting with the utility districts and each one of them and kind of saying, hey, can you please start figuring out what your next step would be, and they can start the process with the surveys and everything else, that gets it rolling. So if you want to do.
I have, and what the city of Portland, what they're facing is the pressure.
Mhm.
Well, we're not, they can't get a grant.
For that.
I mean, the only thing we could do was partner, maybe help them upgrade lines, because what you've got 2-inch lines, 4-inch lines, 6-inch lines. In some areas where you need a 12-inch line for pressure. So they're in the city, you know, they're probably not going to look into investing a whole lot of capital out here somewhere that's not even in their city limits. Unless they got, 150 taps coming where they get their payback. So that's what I wanted the ad hoc for, was to kind of work with the cities to say, hey, where can we go and how can we get there faster? Because 9 years, 9 lines, by the time we get done, it'll be 12 years, 12 lines. I tell people that the grant process is great because it also includes the taps, and that's a lot of things where the people can't afford. But we move at a turtle's pace.
Mr. Mendez?
I've got a couple of comments. I spoke with Mayor Callis today, and I do know, probably, not sure, but this water line extension on Absher Branch Road, they would like to extend it on out, and the city is willing to pay a little bit of money, like $40,000, to extend it on out to make a loop line. So, and that increases, helps their pressure. But also, they are willing to provide water into places that are in the county and not in the city limits, because the water department part is an enterprise fund, and it's just like Bethpage's water district. Just because it's the city of Portland doesn't mean that it's not like Bethpage Water District, and that they won't run provide water for any line that they can, because they get paid for that water, and that's how they upgrade their. But he also asked me that if in the future or now, they're just like you said, and that's some of the problems that we have with providing fire hydrants here and there, because even though you've got a 6-inch water line, maybe you don't have the pressure to operate a fire hydrant. But he also asked that maybe sometime in the future, if we had grants coming along, that we could add in there grants to upgrade a water tank. Like at Oak Grove, they've got a water tank, but it's too small. And so there's a lot of problems there, but I will say this. Sumner County Planning Commission is definitely, right now, Josh is working on a new zoning resolution that's going to help things like this tremendously. We have a lot of, just going out here anymore and dividing off 4 or 5 lots off of a farm is fixing to be, and is pretty much a thing of the past now. And we would like to make most of them a plan use development, where you have your plan, and your plan is approved. And then not only that, in many cases, you go out there and you fix your streets, you curb them, you put the water lines in, and have it all ready before you can even sell one lot. And that's the direction we're heading in, because we are getting away from agriculture. It used to be all agriculture, but like it or not, and you can just bank on, when we run water lines to these places, that more school children, and and that's what happens too. So it's a never-ending battle. Anyway, that's my
And I
comment.
can say, I think what Mr. Taylor is saying is a good idea, because what we have to remember is we could throw money at water lines all day long, and the utility districts that are actually the ones that have the water may say, we can't help you. We don't have this capacity, or we don't have this process. So I think that's a good idea, to get a committee together where we could sit down with the powers that be of those different, of the cities, and then those different agencies, and find out what it is that what do they think about all this?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was here when we did this 9.5 years ago, and at that time, there were some people happy about it, some people unhappy. But I can't remember most everything, and it goes back to, I think Commissioner Menon mentioned the fire things. There are some people that are not happy with the amount of money that goes towards Hendersonville, not happy with the amount that goes here. But to the law director's point, when we did this 10 years ago, we brought all those entities in, every water department head, and we actually had meetings in this room and let them identify the biggest need, and who was going to pay for what they were going to contribute to, because it became, for those that remember, it became a big issue on the amount of streets that they did, roads that they did, that ended up becoming a waste. Being they thought they'd get 15 taps, and they got 1 tap or something like that, and there was a big loss in some of those cases. But the way that was decided and rectified, he brought all those people to the table, like the law director's saying, which might be something doing in the spring after budget season or something.
With that in mind, I'd like to make a resolution, or not a resolution, but if everybody's comfortable with it, what we'll do is I'll mention in my report at the main commission meeting that we are going to eventually set up the ad hoc committee and kind of petition the entire room of commissioners, see who's interested in it, and that way everybody has an opportunity to speak, not necessarily speak on it, but to say, hey, I'm interested. Obviously, we know Mo is, so that's an easy one. But and just kind of go from there, and then after we get the interest at the main meeting, we'll come back next month and just kind of try and, if not next month, we'll kind of figure out who all we can get on the committee, what's a manageable one. Luckily, we've got some people that have done it before, and kind of lay the groundwork for how we can do it. Huh?
We ought to put Kim Mark in the driver's seat to kind of coordinate it, because she's the one that knows about the
Well,
grants.
and that's the same. We can sort of formalize it here, and we'll have an idea of what we want to do better. Everybody comfortable with that? Yes, sir.
You know, one more comment.
Yes, sir.
I do know many years ago, my wife and I built our first little house on a corner, on a curve on Highway 259. And we dug a well with money we didn't have, and about 200 and something feet deep. And gas is about all we got, but not enough to do anything with. So we laid a water line almost down a bluff through the woods to a branch down there to get water. And you say, why would you? Matter of fact, I'll just, no, I won't. But anyway, I started to tell about letters that we've got here before. But anyway, you know, people say, why would you build a house somewhere you don't have water? Well, it was on a family farm that's been in the family 150 years. But anyway, we would come in from hauling hay with hay all over me, get in the shower and get soaked up good, and the water would go off, and you'd have to put your clothes back on and walk down a dirt road with a flashlight and a shotgun and fix the water because people park down there. So I'm all for anybody having city water. But the thing that I'm getting at is that when we did get city water, if I'm not mistaken, they made us pay for the tap before they agreed to run the water by there, you know, and had to get enough taps to for it to be feasible for them to run the water line.
I think everybody's comfortable with that. So that being said, I'll announce it. We'll make the kind of work forward and go from there. Next one is the 2020 census, and this is
Yes. We have Ms. Gregory here tonight, and you'll have to introduce yourself again, sir. Bill Bug. And they are coming with a request. One of the, I think, more important things we're going to be doing this year is, of course, the census. And they're come to request some additional money for advertising to make sure we get public involvement. So I'm going to leave it up to you, Janet.
We all know the 2020 census is right around the corner, and you know the importance of it. It's where $675 billion of federal funds will be allocated across the country based on population. And as rapidly as we've grown in Middle Tennessee, we really need to be sure that everyone's aware of the importance. These are federal funds we'll get for the next 10 years. These are the funds for hospitals, schools, public works, and whatnot. So it's very important to us. We want to make sure everyone is aware of the importance. And we've got a proposal here that Janet's going to.
Well, what we're asking for is we're asking for y'all to sponsor about 6 banners. These banners would include the census logo, the Sumner County and census logo. We were wanting these so that we have a strong census and county presence. Some of the properties that have been suggested to put these, we're asking for approximately 6 of them. Would be at the Bridal House, the Douglas Clark House, Station Camp Greenway, the Bledsoe Historical Park, Castelia Springs Community Center, and then one right here on y'all's property because it has great visibility. We're asking for $500 to cover that. I've gotten a bid from the Fast Signs in Hendersonville, so it'll be a local, Sumner County business doing it. They also do some of the banners for the Hendersonville City, so that's why I went there. So, you know, to cover the 6 signs, $500 would cover it.
Make the motion that we approve the $500 for
Second. I'd like to just
Yes,
add
ma'am.
something in this. I'm part of the complete count committee for the county, and I know there's been some transition with Caitlin leaving and Maggie taking over. I've also started working with the Gallatin Census Committee, and they did a special census a few years back. And if I'm not mistaken, I don't know if you have the numbers handy, but Gallatin, I think, what is their additional income? It's, you know, maybe $250,000 of additional
Several thousand
federal
dollars.
income
Mhm.
because of their special annually, because of doing the special census, because of getting that number right. So just an emphasis that it is really important that we get this right and we get the word out. Gallatin right now, I don't know exactly what they spent when they did their special census, but right now their budget for census related activity, both, you know, they're doing some light pole banners downtown. They've been handing out, I don't know if you've seen little wooden tokens that say census, make sure you're counted. They've got these really cool recipe cards that just, you know, a way to get the word out as well. Their graphics team has done some really funny videos. Actually, if you go watch the Gallatin Facebook page, it's pretty funny. But they're also looking at getting 2 really large 10-foot by 10-foot iron-on signs that will go on the side of a couple of their buildings downtown Gallatin. And then they're also hosting a couple events where people can come in. They'll have computers set up and entice people with food so that they can come in and do it. So their budget for this cycle is around $8,000 just for the city of Gallatin. I know that we're trying to reach all sorts of other pieces and parts of the county. But I don't know if we go through a budget allocation process right now. I don't know if the 500 is what we want to allocate. Can we allocate a exceed amount so that we have some money for the committee to work with beyond that, those few banners? Because there's probably a couple other locations in the county that we could add banners as well beyond those 6.
Absolutely. This was just a list that I got from Maggie.
Yeah.
So I just went off of those approved because it's been really difficult between city and county to even get permission to put just a corrugated sign out. So, you know, any properties, we would like to put it out there as much as possible. So anything that we get approval for would be amazing.
Why don't we go forward with the 500 and the locations they've got, and then if they come up with more locations, feel free to come back and see us again. And is that okay?
I'm gonna,
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna
Yes, sir.
advocate for our commissioner here, and I think what she's saying, they need discretion. And so, you know, $500 is great, but maybe we ought to double down and give them up to $1,000 and leave it up to the count committee to use those monies wisely and to work with our census officials and workers to make sure, because it's that critical that we get a good count of the actual citizens.
It's money we'll get back, but I don't disagree with
And
that at all.
so that's a pittance compared to our overall budget of about $400 million.
Compared to what Gallatin did versus Hendersonville and then the results they had, I think it goes without saying that it makes sense to.
So just a
advertise.
suggestion, I'm not a voting member, but
I would
Thank
be glad
for
to.
articulating what I was trying to propose.
Thank
As
you.
Chris already shot me down.
No, I'll change it, obviously. I changed it to $1,000. Everybody agree with the motion or the amendment to change it to $1,000?
you're gonna give the count
Yes.
committee the discretion to.
Yes, sir.
To obligate those monies.
Yes, obviously.
I'll say.
Any opposed? All in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. All in favor of the original or the motion now?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, obviously that precludes 2 readings,
I have a
so.
question.
Yes, sir. Oh, absolutely.
What can we do different? What did Hendersonville, because Hendersonville obviously did a major screw up last time.
They're not gonna answer that.
Well, I mean, what can we do to try to help improve?
I'll give it.
No, I mean, it's a legitimate.
I mean, it's,
I wasn't here last time. You know,
I mean, more people in Hendersonville.
I think the difference was when I understood, actually, Gallatin had a good ground game plan to where they actually went out and worked the neighborhoods. And I don't think Hendersonville did that. They just tried to advertise and say this is important. And there's a lot of people, you hear it all the time, they're very reluctant to give out information because they may not be a U.S. citizen. They may have other issues. They may feel like they've done something and they don't want to be used
Yeah.
as a net to capture them, I guess.
I'm just saying, when.
So that's
because
an
we
issue.
Read about it, I mean, with
That's
Middle
what
Tennessee growth,
There's
it's
a lot
the
of
most important it's ever been.
misinformation when it comes to this, and there's a lot of people that don't understand what it's used for. We're also on the recruiting side of this, where we're trying to, get employees to come work the census. And, we're trying to get into schools just to educate the seniors and the people that are fixing to be adults on what the census is, what it means to them. I've been to Ball State and spoke to 200 students and had 2 that knew what the census were. 2 people, 2 students, and one was going to be an attorney, so I hope so. But it's, people, a lot of people do not know, and it's not just kids. There's a lot of adults that just do not know what it is or what it's about or where the information goes. That, it is private information, but it helps bring money, to your community, so.
We also need a lot of these temporary employees to follow up on people who haven't done their census. After everybody's had the opportunity to do their census by online or by mail or by phone, if they haven't done it, the Census Bureau has the information of who hasn't done their census, and they need people to go visit them and encourage them to do the census count. And it's always better if you have someone working in the neighborhood who is from the neighborhood, so we like to get local people. So anything you can do to help us recruit people would be very helpful. And these are pretty lucrative jobs too. Flexible hours, what?
$17 an hour in Sumner County, 58 cents a mile.
My 15-year-old boy.
18 years and older, has a background check.
You're out.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank y'all. All right, capital projects was removed. Go to transfers. Go ahead.
First one is any of them over $2,500. Nothing unusual.
Thank you, sir.
One thing to note, item I, which is the volunteer fire departments, that one does need to go to county commission.
It just didn't get it got,
It was the second
yeah, the
page. Yeah.
page got
Page
dropped
2
off.
didn't
Yeah.
get emailed to us.
Okay, so this is part of the report that
It was
we
part of,
allocated.
right, it
Yeah.
just
The rest of the
didn't, it
138.
didn't, for some reason, that page didn't go through.
Right. We
Yes,
received
sir.
both pages.
All in favor, or did we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, passed unanimously. Thank you. Tax refunds instead of anything crazy. And a motion to group and approve, and I'll second then. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We need anything else? All
Motion.
right, let's boogie. Thanks, y'all.